This was a good week of chapters with some major surprises and twists thrown in. So we're going to start off this week with One Piece, chapter 1047, and this was a good chapter, having everything in the arc seemingly come to a head, with Kaido and Luffy continuing to go toe-to-toe, even more so now as Kaido continues to prove that he is more or less stronger than Luffy, but Luffy is still able to hold his own. To a degree, he's losing for the most part, but he ends up going into the sky, hiding amongst the cloud cover, while still holding on to Kaido. Yamato tells Momonosuke that he has to move the island, and that with Kaido soon to be defeated, the island will fall, killing everyone, unless he can hold up the island with his clouds. Momo is of course completely panicked and does not believe he can do so, but remembers when he was about to first leave with the rest of the Red Scabbards into the future and how much he didn't want to go until Kinemon pleaded to allow the Red Scabbards that survived there to go and have one more chance to fight and not die in the burning castle, where then he resolves to go. So maybe we'll get lucky and Momo can actually do what he should and step up, but we'll see. Everywhere else on the island, the samurai begin to resolve themselves that they're going to die on the island. Some of the pirates don't seem too thrilled, and the beast pirates are completely unhappy with that arrangement of dying on Onigashima, but the samurai are content with the fact that they want Luffy to win, even if it means they're dead. You see that the water is still coming through, and that Orochi was able to transform back into his giant dragon snake form after one of the nails finally got undone. However, he's still on fire, and I'm still betting that he'll die with the flames. I don't imagine he's surviving this, and I think it's more poetic that he does die here with this. He then goes and tries to attack Hiyori, and we'll see if he actually is able to be finished off. If the water somehow saves him, part 17, he falls out of the island. Who knows? But I assume he's done with this fire, and Hiyori is the one that kills him. He's just clinging to life because he is that filled with bitter hate that he won't let Oden even have one modicum of a victory, that he'll take down Hiyori just because he's that bitter. The final shot of the chapter is Luffy going for the ultimate attack with gear third to the extreme, to the largest it's ever been, to take down Kaido in one huge gigantic punch, and he tells Momo to move Onigashima out of the way so he can land the punch on Kaido, and that's where the chapter ends. Well, I'll be very curious to see what the next chapter provides in the fact that is Momo going to succeed, or is Luffy going to destroy the island with Kaido still on it, or will some other thing happen? Who knows? But right now it looks like Luffy is about to bring down the hammer and end Kaido with one final attack. I'm assuming Kaido will still survive this attack, and it'll be one last barrage of multiple hits by Luffy, like what he had to do with Rob Lucci. So that was the chapter. I think it was a good chapter, a nice setup chapter for the next one. So overall, I'll give this chapter a B. I think it was good. I think the next chapter has the real potential to be a giant world-ending chapter, as it's probably going to be the final chapter of the actual battle here. Maybe the second to last chapter, depending upon how much he wants to draw this fight out any longer. Seeing as how pretty much everyone else is done fighting, they're all waiting to see if Luffy wins or if Kaido wins. Now we are on to Black Clover, chapter 331, and this was a big chapter. And big as in a big moment, a big turning point in the story, because again, it was a relatively short chapter, actually, but it starts off with Yuno meeting his mother and reaffirming his dream to become Wizard King with Asta, which should be very interesting to see as Asta reaffirms it as well, and they both seemingly are planning to become the next Wizard King, even though Yuno is pretty much already destined for royalty within the Spade Kingdom, but he still wants to earn the Wizard King mantle in the Clover Kingdom before probably heading over to the Spade Kingdom, or uniting the two, who knows. But the biggest twist happens in the second half of this chapter, as we cut back to the Clover Kingdom with Julius being very much concerned over what he's starting to piece together. And we see the judgment guy, the scales and judgment, Demantio, and we see him walk into Julius's office and explain that the three devils that attacked or implanted themselves in the Clover Kingdom 20 years ago was Lucifero, Beelzebub, and the time devil Estroth. And seeing as how Julius was the only ever time mage, Demantio asks if Julius knows anything. And Julius had finally, all the pieces aligned with itself, that he finally figured out that he was seemingly the problem, was whatever this last host was, whatever the devil was. And he asks Demantio to stop him, but before that happens, he transforms and stops Demantio from doing anything. And then we see that Julius is back to what he usually looks like, his adult self, and the other devil, Edred Mullich, arrives. That other devil that was watching Lucifero arrives and asks how he's doing, and we find out that Julius is actually the fourth of the Dark Triad siblings, because I remembered looking up some of this just to get some of the naming correct, that with Xenon flashback, seeing that there was a fourth one, I just remembered that looking this up, and seeing that this is him was even more impactful. I was very shocked that Julius now, it makes sense. And knowing how broken of a character Julius was, I imagine what happened to a degree was that the Wizard King Julius that had been running around for all that time was actually Lucius here, the fourth of the Zalgritz siblings. That's what their names are. Except he was just being more playful, as he felt no fear. And then when he quote-unquote died to Licht in the Elf War arc, I wonder if he put his goodness in the time capsule, and so the younger Julius genuinely didn't know, and so that's why then he was looking into it, and then when Demantio finally figured it out, and so did the young Julius, Lucius reemerged and shut everything down. So with that plot twist in order, now we go into the next 3-month hiatus wondering what's gonna happen next, especially with a little bit more intel that I have than I did even when I first read the chapter. It makes it very interesting. So overall, I think I'm gonna give this chapter an A. It was a good chapter. Sure, it's on the lower A spectrum, but the twist at the end was still a big enough twist that I'm very curious to see how it'll go, because I'm assuming they saved a lot of the quote-unquote deaths to characters for this character. Seeing as how, once again, Black Clover is seemingly a 2-arc or 2-saga story is almost interesting. Seeing how the first half was all about the elves and the original theory of a devil arriving and the Wizard King saving the day. Now this second half has all been about these devils, this power play between the Zalgritz family and the giant devils that run the underworld. And seeing as how they've had this masterful plan for so long is intriguing. Seeing the fact that they implanted one to stay in the Clover Kingdom, I'm assuming there might be another one in the Diamond Kingdom, and we know that the Heart Kingdom was under attack, and then of course the Spade Kingdom was completely taken over. So I wonder what else is going to happen. I'm assuming that upon the return of Black Clover, this arc isn't going to be a very short one. This might be a very long arc, a couple of arcs put in, if that makes sense, just one last major development, because there's no way they can beat Julius here, or Lucius I should say, because he's too powerful. I imagine that they saved a bunch of the characters to go against him and lose. They're gonna die. Like, I can see Yami losing to Lucius, and Vengeance losing to Lucius as well, Marioliana, all of them basically losing to him, and it being up to the younger generation to win. Potentially. I could also see it going other ways, as this is very much the cliched manga, but done well, done good. So we'll see how this twist pays off in the end. It was very shocking to see that he is the villain of the final arc, and it feels right to have it that way, in a manner of speaking, that the guy we've seen be the most powerful player in this entire universe, be the ultimate bad guy in the end, just feels almost fitting that of course they have to take down the Wizard King. That almost just seems right, but that's also just very funny how much of a twist and turn it is. So we'll have to see how much this goes, how well this works, and how interesting this last arc could potentially be. Now again, it's 3 months. We'll have quite the break between this, so by the time it returns, it'll return quite explosively, I imagine. So now we're on to Undead Unluck chapter 108. And this was a good chapter showing mostly Rip's backstory. And the backstory is basically what we've already kind of concluded through bits and pieces they've told us with Latala and Rip, that Rip became a doctor to save Latala's sister, who he was in love with, but ultimately, like any other negator, as soon as he was trying to save the day, everything went wrong as his powers activated. She needed some sort of surgery, and he became a doctor, a very famous and well-known doctor, a prodigy in some way, and he was going to perform the surgery, but as soon as he made the cut, they could not heal that cut. Nothing they could do would fix it. And so she died. Latala also became quite the psychic, though I don't know how that really pertained to anything, but she did. She was very good at it. But ultimately, they both ended up not being able to work out what they had thought they had seen, or at least what Latala saw, and he could not save her as he had promised because of his negator power. And so we get that full backstory. We get to see it, and it's there. We cut back to the present, and we find out that the arc is actually the round table, and you need to use some sort of points to use it. So Rip plans on having Andy give him his points so Rip can go into the next loop and save Latala's sister. Now, I'm curious to see how this goes, and I wonder how many people can go back through the arc, because if it's the table, I wonder if you can have multiple people do it. There's more questions for the next few chapters to find out how all of it works, because they're gonna need it. Things are about to hit the fan. All the plans they've made are up in smoke, and they're gonna need to send someone into the next loop. Can't be Rip, because he only cares about saving his love. He doesn't care about anything else. So sending him back is a waste, as things will just go downhill again, and the next loop is the last loop. There's nothing they can do. So the next few chapters should be very interesting to see how much setup they do for the next loop. And I'm curious to see who goes back. Like I said, I'm pretty much standing firm that I got it kind of right from the get-go, that Fuko will go into the next loop, having it be that she is in her strongest form, and she sets up everything and prepares and gets everything going and right, so that then they're ready for God in the next loop because of Fuko's preparing. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good. Seeing Rip's backstory is always good, and getting the hard confirmation that, again, it was no different than any other negator, that he was doing it for his loved one, but ultimately God is cruel and decided to have his powers manifest at the moment he was planning to save someone he cares about's life. Latala, I'm not sure if it manifested there or if it showed up later, who knows, but it looks like another typical negator story at this point. And now that we find out that the arc is the round table, it means that the round table is actually a bit more important than even we had initially thought, so things will be interesting with the next few chapters, given the fact that Rip and Andy are going to be fighting toe-to-toe, and the fact that Ragnarok is upon them. There's not much they can do, so it'll be very exciting to see where the last frantic moments of this loop go before someone's sent to the next one. Now we're on to Mashle, Magic and Muscles, chapter 105, and this was a good chapter as it was just the next trial. And we see that Mash is now having to train with machines that his new master has implanted his information into these different machines that are slightly stronger than Mash, and he has to fight 99 of them before reaching level 100. And so he's going to now have to struggle against these machines that are slightly stronger than him and know his weaknesses and strengths. So he has quite the challenge ahead of him, as we also see what the other students such as Lance and Dot and Finn are up to try to get stronger themselves. We also see at the very end of the chapter that Innocent Zero has amassed quite the army of magical creatures to work for him to invade the quote-unquote good guys' lands to destroy everything. And the Divine Visionaries and some of the other more powerful adult-esque characters believe that they're strong enough to be about on equal footing with Innocent Zero's army, quote-unquote, but they do not know of the evil army of giants and djinns and halflings and all sorts of other monstrous creatures that Innocent Zero has recruited. So we'll see how Mash's training is going to end up helping him in the long run, as well as everyone else, and see how far they are able to go, despite the fact that Innocent Zero is also preparing quite diligently to defeat everyone. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the rest of the world starting to prepare, as well as seeing what Mash has to do to continue to grow stronger. Now, the next chapter, I'm curious to see where it goes, if Mash will get it all done very quickly, if we just skip most of the training portion, or if we continue to world build a little bit while we know what Mash is doing. That'll be fun to see what they decide to do in the long run of that. Now we're on to Sakamoto Days, chapter 68, and this was a good chapter showing the continued fight between the students, Shin, the kid, the fangirl, and the other guy that's shown up here now who's afraid to speak out loud. They're all versing Slur's puppet, who is controlled by his main henchman, and the battle's not going well for the kids as they're struggling to keep up with the puppet. Shin tries to read his mind, as I thought, and he can't get through because the guy is asleep. He's only being able to move because of the henchman's sort of advanced gear that's on him. We find out also that the Deerhead guy was able to hire him, the puppet, because he put out an online job application for someone who was flexible, which I thought was very funny. And so the henchman is not taking the fight overly seriously and keeps running into, ironically, obstacles in the place he's actually at instead of in the field that the puppet's fighting in. So all of the young students that are collaborating, trying to fight the puppet, are losing, in a manner of speaking. The guy who doesn't speak for fear of stumbling watches the others and admires them for the fact that they're willing to do this crazy fight, even though they're losing and more or less failing. Shin ultimately tells him that it's useless, he can read his mind, so he heard everything and told him it's best just to get out there and try instead of holding back. And so the guy who refuses to talk says that he has a plan and asks them to follow him, except he messes up follow and fumbles his words right away, which is very funny. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the continued battle, as well as some more antics with the henchman running into walls in the place that he's actually at, and you see that the puppet is like rubbing his head because the henchman is rubbing his head because he just slammed into a wall. There are a couple of funny gags there, and the fighting itself is very intense, seeing these younger people trying to stop this madman, in a manner of speaking. So I wonder what the next few chapters will be, if they'll succeed because of the guy who won't talk's plan, or if the fight's just going to continue to drag on until someone comes in and saves the day. It's very interesting, and I look forward to seeing how this fight ultimately ends. So that was all of the chapters. This was a good week overall, with One Piece having its surprising moment of Luffy's potential triumph, Black Clover leaving us with quite the cliffhanger to keep us intrigued for its eventual return. Undead had a flashback of a fan favorite character. Mashle continued the training of everyone at this point, and Sakamoto continued its battle to see if the younger characters can take down a very powerful character. So now for everything else, we had My Hero, which was fine, Jujutsu Kaisen, which was fine, and Blue Box, which was again fine. None of them I am particularly interested in talking about outside of they were good chapters. They were fine. They did their jobs in a manner of speaking, with each one being interesting for their own reasons. Haikyuu had a special one-shot, which was nice just to see all the characters once again having continued to live their lives and go more and more into the professional volleyball circuits. And one of the main characters was organizing a super all-star volleyball sort of match, and so he recruited all the characters that we know from at least the last bit of the arc from the last one, and a few new characters that were very strong in the new wave of volleyball. Then we had Yazakura family, where the main character was able to cure the eldest brother, and they were all going to punish the eldest brother for what he had done when the father ended up arriving, leaving them in quite the suspenseful spot, seeing as how they're going to now very much have to probably fight him and not win. Elusive Samurai was good, having it that the war is upon them and that they're getting ready to train, and they're keeping the main character's identity still a secret to make sure that he earns the respect of his troops that he is now leading, who are dejected that they didn't have a legendary general under them. P times 6 was good, as we get to see Lucky's performance, at least the start of it, and we see that it is mainly for Mimin to not hate piano, and we find out that basically everyone's figuring that Mimin does not fit the classical piano mold, and she should go and become a pop star, is more or less what I'm figuring that they're going to implement. That she's not for the classical world, she is very much someone who should be creating her own sound for music and the piano. So I'd be very curious to see if Lucky can do that, as the dream scenario he's putting out there is basically only for Mimin, as no one else is able to really grasp what is going on within the quote-unquote dream section. Ashiman was good as the character that we thought we were getting an alliance with is in fact betraying them already, and now we have a bit of a gang war upon the streets of Ashiman, and we'll see if the main characters can pull out on top, or if they just rescue the main characters, if that made any sense. Doron was good as we meet a new character, the girl that was not obsessed but lightly stalking the main character, and we see that she's actually very skilled in samurai work. It's just that she's a bit weird, which is fun, so hopefully we keep getting more of these weird characters to add to the group. And with each new addition to the samurai group, each one will get some level of suspicion, knowing that there is a traitor amongst them, which adds a level of intrigue to see which one's going to end up being the good or bad guy in the group that's going to surround the main character. So that was all of the chapters. This was again a pretty good week, especially given the fact that there is no week of chapters next week. So we will be on break, as will this. So that's always good to have. Hopefully the next chapters will be bigger and better as they all get a week off, and we'll get to see some more developments, because this week was a pretty good week. Again, Black Clover's surprising twist and One Piece's surprising moment nearing its climax were probably the highlights of this week as a whole. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.